Don't forget your mic.
You guys ready? Mr. Finster, Mr. Sadie, you guys ready?
Yep.
Good evening. I'd like to call us to order the January 3rd, 2022 meeting of County Council. What a way to start the new year, 3 days in. Thank you for being here with us tonight as we do the business of the county. I hope that everyone will be respectful as we go through this agenda tonight. And again, I want to thank you all for being here. This time I'm going to ask Councilman Inslee Feimster if he would to lead us in the invocation and the pledge.
First, I'd like to pray. Our Heavenly Father, we pray for those in federal government. We also pray for those in military, especially those on duty while we celebrated the holidays. We pray for the law enforcement people who protect us 24 hours a day. Heavenly Father, we ask for guidance as we deliberate county business tonight. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
You join me with a pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is the time when we hold public forum. It's an opportunity for the public to come give us feedback or tell us about issues you deem important. Madam Clerk, please call our first speaker.
On the rainy morning of December the 11th, my husband had to bury my neighbor's cat, Saki. You see, 2 days before, on December the 9th, my husband called me when I was at a business lunch to tell me he had viewed on our home cameras that it appeared the dogs from next door were running across our yard with a cat in one of their mouths. We were immediately concerned. For one reason, the day before, one of the dogs had bitten a gentleman that was working in our yard preparing for a fence. And second, we were going to be devastated and furious if this was our cat, Jasmine. My husband left work and rushed home. Come to find out, it was not Jasmine, it was Saki. Saki's owner is my widowed neighbor, and we had to give her the bad news and ask our neighbor to identify the cat. Then we buried Saki in her backyard. So why do I tell you this story? My reason is I have continued to come to you month after month describing not only a code enforcement issue at 1781 6 Mile Highway, but also concerning activities specifically involving a transient population that rotate in and out of this residence. You see, this dog didn't belong to the dweller of this residence. It belonged to one of the transient men that frequent the burned out RV on this property. These men come with activities that are not in the best interest of the community, the school, my neighborhood, much less my family that lives next door. Month after month, I have attempted to work with the sheriff, an elected official, regarding these activities, and with county council, elected officials regarding code enforcement. Most recently, I met with the solicitor's office, elected official, who gave me little hope that they were genuinely concerned. In addition, the probate judge, an elected official, has failed to ensure that the deceased owner's documented will has been carried out. Each time I feel like I'm met with, well, we can't, but this office can. It's a continuous circle of passing the buck with little accountability to the citizens. Here's what I'm experiencing. It's a complete lack of collaboration among elected officials. The org chart, as I'm sure many folks have reviewed, this org chart is defined on the Pickens County website. At the top of the org chart, it clearly states citizens of Pickens County. The org chart includes these positions: sheriff, county council, solicitor, probate judge. All clearly are elected officials that report to the citizens, yet they lack collaboration with one another to be effective for the citizens. The problem is they lack a vision to see concerns strategically versus in silos.
Thank you, Ms. McLean.
I want to use my time to pray for our community. Dear God, thank you that you make all things new. Thank you for all that you've allowed into our lives this past year, the good along with the hard things, because the hard things have reminded us how much we need you. We pray for your Spirit to lead us each step of this new year. We ask that you will guide our decisions and turn our hearts to deeply desire your will above all else. We ask that you will open doors needed to be opened and close the ones needing to be shut tight. We ask for help to pursue your love first, above any dream and earthly desire that we have in our own mind and heart. Your will, Lord, alone matters here on earth as it is in heaven. We ask for your wisdom, for your strength and power to be constantly present within us as we make our daily decisions. We pray you would make us strong and courageous for the road ahead. Give us ability beyond what we feel able. Let your gifts you bestowed upon us at birth flow through us so that you would be honored by our lives and that others will be drawn to you because of our actions. We pray that you'd keep us far from the snares and traps of temptations, that you would whisper in our ear when we need to run, and whisper in our heart when we need to stand our ground and not compromise. We ask for you to cover us and keep us distanced from the evil intent of the enemy who comes to rob and steal and deceive. We pray that you would give us discernment and insight to understand your will, hear your voice, and know your ways. Give us supernatural endurance to stay the course, not swerving off your course, or being too easily distracted by other things that would seek to call us away from a closer walk with you. Forgive us for the times we have leaned on our own understanding and did not seek your guidance first. Forgive us for allowing pride and selfishness to wreak havoc over our lives. Forgive us for not following your ways and for living distant from your presence. We confess our need for you, dear Lord. We ask that you make all things new in our hearts, in our minds, in our lives for this coming year. We pray for your refreshing over us. Keep your words of truth planted firm within us. Help us to keep focused on what is pure and right. Give us the power to be obedient to your word. May we be lovers of truth and fighters for life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And help us, dear Lord, protect our property rights. You gave us a free will, and let our free will choose your will every single time. Shine your light in us, through us, over us. May we make a difference in this world for your glory and purpose. To you be the glory and honor in this new year and forever. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Ms. Raines.
My name is Doug Stokes. I own Stokes Electric and Black Snake Mini Storage. My issue is fire fees. I feel like I have been sold down the river about these fire fees. My fire fees used to be around $200 a month. Y'all have to excuse me, I have tremors. And plus, I'm scared to death. So, anyway, Year before last, my fire fees went from $200 to $1,400. Now this year, it went to $3,100. It's almost as much as my county taxes. And the whole thing is, it's not fair. You're charging me for a 100,000 square foot building. All I have is 13,700 square feet. That's all I have. And this is my retirement. My son runs the electrical for me, but he's out sick so much, he just keeps his head above water. But having a fire fee thrown on me from $200 for the last 20 years, one time it was 4, one time it was 3 something. Now, $3,100, $3,150. There's got to be a reason for that. I have nothing against the fire department. I have friends that works at the fire department. I've known friends that worked at the fire department. I've even done electrical on the fire department. But there's no sense in this, no sense at all. It ain't just only my building. It's other buildings in the county. I've done a survey on them. All of them are charged more. I got a nice home in Easley, $85 last year for the fire fees. That's, I accept it, that's good. But stacking it on all of us people building our businesses in the county, it looks like to me the county, people like me, are paying for the fire fees. And I just think it needs to be leveled out some. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Third item on our agenda tonight is approval of minutes. I'll ask for a motion approving the minutes from the December 6th council meeting, December 20th special called meeting.
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chairman Costner. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 4 on tonight's agenda is the administrator's report. Mr. Roper.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to update you on a few things that are going on with the staff and with the county. As we've started in many instances, we'll start this month with a COVID update. I know that you all are probably as fatigued by this as we are as a staff. You're just tired, you turn on the TV, you turn on the radio, you look in the newspaper, that's what you hear about. And I know that can be tiring. I can just tell you from the county standpoint, we know that we have 782 active cases that DHEC knows about. There have been 512 deaths in Pickens County attributed is the word I'm looking for, to COVID-19. But the practical point of this that many people want to ask about is, what does that mean for your county government? Vaccinations, masking, all these decisions that are personal decisions that be made with you and your family, with your health care provider. It's not really the point of our meeting tonight or of my update to you tonight. Instead, people want to know, what about county government? Is county government about to close down again? We got that question. I can tell you that we have, as of today, we have 23 workers that are on some type of quarantine, 23 county employees that are on some type of quarantine. We've had 37 employees that have tested positive for COVID-19 since December 1st, and of those, 27 have been since Christmas. So we have seen an increase in numbers among our workforce, but we have done what we did the last time this happened. The way we look at it as a county staff is we have the playbook in place. We came up with a program it's been over a year ago now, of how we would operate, and it's what we have called Phase 3. So we're operating at Phase 3, which means we're open to the public, we're providing full service to the public, but we'll just basically remind each other in our interactions with each other. We will try to use common sense, best practices for social distancing, cleaning, and minimizing personal contact. We'll also seek to encourage people to use online resources for things like paying your property taxes, which are due on the 19th of this month. We would encourage you to do that online if you are able. But what our main goal, members of council, is to minimize the disruption of services despite these employee absences. And I'll give you 2 examples. One is The library. Over the weekend, Stephanie Howard, the library director, reached out to HR and was very frank with them about she was having people in quarantine and may have to look at closing a branch. But through some work of hers and in flexing some staff around, she was able to avoid doing that. That's what we're going to try to do in case after case. I talked to my staff this morning about let's have each other's back. Let's fill in for each other where we can and try to keep the customers, the public, to not even notice. Let's try to do that. So we're working on that, and I can tell you that Ms. Howard was able to keep all the branches open today. That was not a problem. Similarly, with our Roads and Bridges department, they had several people out on quarantine, and then we had a storm last night. So that made things difficult, but I'll give you a report later on. They've got all but one county road open as of right now. So we're going to continue with our normal operations as much as we can in what we call our phase 3 plan, if you'll remember back over a year ago, when we opened up in a 3-phase approach. So I just wanted to reassure the public about that we're open for business and we're here to serve them. I referenced the storm update. The one road that's still closed is Saluda Hill Road, although we've had folks working up there all day. I'm also aware that Channel 7 went up there today to check because not only was our Roads and Bridges folks working, also our fire department was up there working, and also members of the public were pitching in, property owners up there. So it's a very collaborative, very, very cooperative group up there working, and I think someone called used to coverage, so we hope for some good coverage there, and we hope to have that road back open so that we'll have all of our county roads open after the storm. I wanted to update you on a couple things with solid waste. I don't know if you noticed, but there are a couple of pictures outside, and I've reproduced the pictures here. But before I talk about those, I want to tell you about the brush grinder. You'll remember the brush grinder has been offline and needed repairs for many weeks. We were able to get a private company to come in and grind us back to where we could accept brush from the public. And we've been accepting brush from the public since December 22nd. But we expect our grinder to be back online next week, and we'll be able to start taking commercial and municipal brush again. So please thank the public for their patience on that. But then these pictures are more related to the shredder. You'll remember the TANA shredder that council authorized the purchase of some months back. This is what the landfill looked like out there when that purchase was made in August of 21, while we're still waiting for delivery. What you see there is that the capacity of the landfill has been reached, and they're starting to pack C&D waste down the road to the landfill because they didn't have anywhere else to put it. And you can see the equipment they have there. They're scooping it out with that big track hoe, putting it in a truck, taking it to Greenville. But this was the amount that was coming in, and they weren't able to keep up with it. But so now I want to show you this picture just for perspective. You can see how large that truck is back there. But not only have our solid waste department been able to handle the incoming C&D stream from all comers, also they've been able to reduce the backlog. And what you see now, and the picture doesn't really do it justice if you go out there, but some of you have been out there. What they've done now is gone back into the landfill enough to where we're actually landfilling again. We're actually putting stuff in the landfill instead of hauling it away. And more importantly, probably for you all, is that we'll continue to regain capacity month over month now. That C&D shredder, you'll remember, it also captures metal. Metal that would normally be hauled or landfilled. It's captured now and we're able to resell it. We've seen a dramatic increase in the collection from our metal vendor. You'll see just for November and December, we collected $112,548 from our metal vendor. So we feel like it's more than proving it was worth the investment that you all saw to make. Just so you know, we're able to keep up with how the shredder works because it's a next-gen shredder. It keeps data for us, how long it's running, and it produces a report. I don't know if you can tell, but the little black up and down lines, the yellow, that's the times of the day that it's actively running. So you can see that we're running it almost every day we're open. There may be certain weather days where we can't. And then the green there, I think, and this appears to be a situation where there might be an entry error, but you'll see here that black is one type of waste and green is the other. I believe green represents tires. I'm going to get a follow-up report on you for that. But you'll see we're also shredding tires when we can't do it. But I just wanted to report back to you on that because we feel like the shredder's showing good progress, and it will continue to make improvements in our solid waste offerings. Gentlemen, I want to talk to you for a minute about ARPA. You all, in your discussions about ARPA, you've identified kind of a consensus number one concern. And that number one concern that you want to address with ARPA is a countywide radio system, getting away from the fractured, piecemeal, not compatible countywide system to something that can work countywide. Just wanted to let you know that we put that request for proposals out here a couple of weeks back. Those proposals will close on January 14th. We've already received a good response from people, not just here locally, but nationally. We've had some responses to people inquiring about this radio RFP. So we're hoping they'll be able to give us some good proposals on how to move forward so that you all will have a better idea of what a cost would be on that as you look at your ARPA fund. Again, that closes on January 14th, and we will look to make an award in early February. As I've done in past months, I want to keep you updated on our capital purchases for this year. They show up on blue on that screen, but they're green on mine. Those are the ones that we've done everything. It's either been delivered or it's been purchased. But one of the main reasons that I want you to see all of those have either been ordered or already delivered. One of the main reasons I want to bring it up tonight is to show you this fire truck and to squelch any rumors that might come up. This fire truck is in this year's capital improvement plan. It's for Holly Springs. It's a new truck for Holly Springs Fire District. You can see the stuff on the side. It says Holly Springs. But it's been delivered, and Holly Springs has a working fire truck that until this one is ready, it's in the bay. Holly Springs doesn't have another place to put it. So we have this right now in the Vineyards Fire Department because they've got a bay while we get all the equipment put on it. But I just want to reassure you, this is the sort of thing that I have learned over the last couple of years that starts a rumor. They ordered that fire truck for Holly Springs and they've got it up at the Vineyards. It will quickly be put into service down in Holly Springs. The reason that the Vineyards is the logical choice is the chief at Holly Springs, his full-time job, he works at the Vineyards, so it's easy for him through the day to get that thing up and ready to go. But we're excited about it. I think it's going to be a good addition, much needed in the Holly Springs community. Also want to announce, and I'm doing this on behalf of Chris Brink, who's been working really hard with the public on and with the Planning Commission, a public hearing on the draft comprehensive plan Thursday, January 27th at 6 p.m. in this room. So Thursday, January 27th in this room. This will be a public hearing on the draft plan. Planning Commission will be there. If you'd like a copy of that draft comprehensive plan, you can get it from the office of the Planning Department, which is just down the hall. It's also available on the county website where I reviewed it myself today. A bit of good news, and I want to point out a new employee that we're excited to have, Miss Brittany Chapman. Brittany, if you'd stand, and Mr. Farley, if you'd stand as well. The council had the foresight to create a position this year in this year's budget for a small business liaison. And Ms. Chapman started work today as her first day on the job as your Alliance Pickens Small Business Liaison. Ms. Chapman is a Pickens County native. She went to Daniel High School. She's worked in Central, Liberty, Pickens for many years. She was the business license official for the town of Pickens, so she's used to working with small businesses. Has a lot of good relevant experience, perfect personality and background for the job, be able to relate to the small businesses in Pickens County. Now, Mr. Farley would say that his entire job has been to relate to the small businesses in Pickens County, but when he thinks small business, he thinks St. Jude Medical and United Tool and Mold, and they do count under the federal guidelines of small businesses. So he's giving me the stink eye right now. But anyway, that being said, Ms. Chapman is going to be in the mom and pop. She's going to be working with the Chambers of Commerce. She's going to be working with the Main Street Revitalization Association. She's going to be working with those folks, hand in glove, to try to see what Alliance Pickens can do to help our smallest businesses in Pickens County thrive and succeed. So please, y'all help me welcome Ms. Chapman and give her good wishes on her job. If it suits you, Mr. Chairman, she has asked that she could be excused early because her son has his first ever basketball game.
Absolutely, that's the most important thing right now. So, welcome to the team. And also, before I conclude and take any of your questions, I'd like to ask that you add a personnel matter to executive session regarding COVID-19. Any questions for Mr. Roper?
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman Cosman?
Excuse me. Mr. Roper, Mr. Stokes came here and was talking about the fire fees, and we've been talking about this for months.
Yes, sir.
And if I look on our commercial fee schedule, the highest one's $1,800, and he's paying $3,150. Where are we with? I know that the Emergency Services Board was trying to come up with a plan. We've just gone out and back, out and back, out and back. Are we going to get anything?
Yes, we are. I actually have some, I guess, I don't want to couch it as good news because I haven't seen the proposal yet. But I know the Emergency Services Board has worked on that. One of their members took it on as a project. He's met with our Emergency Services Director, Billy Gibson, and says that he has a path forward. The Emergency Services Board is going to meet on that next Tuesday night and then make a recommendation to council about how to proceed. So they have taken this issue seriously, have worked on it, and we're anxious to see their recommendation of how to bring more equity into the system.
So when will we be?
We'll have that recommendation after next Tuesday night.
Okay.
Other questions for Mr. Roper? Councilman Waters?
I feel like this is a Groundhog Day event.
Yeah.
Over and over and over. What's going on 6 Mile?
We're waiting for the jury trials. We're issuing repeated violations, but we're waiting on those jury trials to occur. I met with the folks down there that came to meet with me last week. The conversations that, the comments she was making here today are the conversations we had about collaboration, about working together. Based on our meeting, I had a conversation with the solicitor's office to make sure the solicitor's office understood how important this case was to Pickens County. Not that just this was some minor code issue, but this was something that was important to us as a county. I think we are doing everything we reasonably can do, and I think they are satisfied that we are doing everything we reasonably can do. But we do need to foster more collaboration from some of our elected officials to see that this problem gets solved. I've committed to them that I'll help them do that, and we'll continue doing what we can do.
I just, after hearing her speak, the frustration, the solicitor, what we're doing, what the sheriff's not doing, it's an embarrassment to county government. This is a serious issue. Some animal died. We have something in our ordinances about that, do we not? A wild animal or a dog killing somebody else's animal?
There's a cruelty to animals aspect in our
Well, they have to control their animal.
That's right.
And so, was there a ticket issued or someone thrown in jail?
Actually, as far as that goes, I don't know, although this is the first details I've heard about that. I think we discussed it generally during our meeting last Wednesday. But I can tell you, Mr. Whitehurst, I appreciate your concern. It is like Groundhog Day. We're doing everything we can. I think the citizens out there appreciate that we're doing what we can. I just want to try to be a voice for them to encourage other elected officials to do the same.
Is there anything this council can do to have some of these officials step up and emphasize the importance of it? I mean, this has been going on for years.
Yeah.
This is not like something that happened 6 weeks ago, and I'm frankly tired of it.
I understand, completely understand your frustration and the community's frustration. We have county employees that live in that subdivision, and I know their frustration as well. But I can tell you this, when it comes to some of the elected officials, some of the appointed officials, they're judicial officers. It would be inappropriate for us to contact them. Okay, we've got to go through the slow, tedious process, and that's frustrating. For some of the other elected officials, as I promised them that day last Wednesday, I've talked with the solicitor myself, personally with Mr. Wilkins, about this, to stress how important it is to us, and to offer whatever assistance we can. So there's some elected officials that we can talk with, and I promise them we will.
Have we emphasized to the sheriff?
Yes.
And what kind of results are we getting there?
I can't speak to the results. I don't know that the sheriff's office has made any arrests or issued any tickets that I'm aware of. We are the only entity that's been issuing tickets up to this
But he certainly has the authority to do that because they have broken ordinances, county ordinances.
Yes, sir.
But that's not happening. When is the trial date?
Do you remember yeah, it's coming up in the next 10 days or so.
So when we meet here again,
That trial should have happened.
that trial should have happened.
As I've explained to the group that came and met with me, nothing in the world will do the county government more good when it comes to dilapidated property conditions, things like this, than a successful prosecution down in magistrate's court. You make an example of someone, particularly someone who's flaunted the law again and again, it's the best message you could see.
Is there a way we can invite the sheriff in here to explain to us why he's not passing out warrants for people's arrest?
I'll be glad to extend that invitation.
I'd like him to come explain to these people right here who live there and to us why that's not being done. Can you send that invitation out?
Yes, sir.
It may be done by the next trial period, but I'd certainly like to hear why he finds it not necessary to do that. Sorry,
Thank you.
I'm done.
Other questions for Mr. Roper?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sater?
Mr. Roper, in July and November, I asked the administration to get some financial records on the Liberty Performing Arts Center Foundation. Is anybody working on getting me that information?
Yes, we've made requests both from our finance our finance office. Mr. Garino has made multiple inquiries of that board, and then also our parks director, Allison Fowler, has also made inquiries.
And
We haven't had any response to that.
is the people you're contacting, are they alive? Are they still board members or?
Current members, as far as we know of that board, we've contacted, and Mr. Greeno, I can say for his point, he's gone through every person he has been able to identify as being on that board.
Okay, because the county council through ordinance created that foundation.
That's correct.
Gave them $70,000. The question is, are we going to ensure that they follow state and federal law in the county ordinance?
Once they're created as a 501c3, the degree to which we have control over them to ensure something is something I would defer to the county attorney.
Yeah, but just saying all that, the 501c3s are independent corporations. They're nonprofit corporations, but they are corporations, so they're separate entities in the county. I had a conversation with Mr. Polino today about that very issue. In our audits, our auditor, there's an accounting practice that you go through with certain tests of do you appoint their board members, do you control it, to determine what types of responsibility we would have outside of the corporate entity. The corporate entity, the 501c3 itself, is as a person or a company is responsible for itself. But we do at some point, depending on how involved we are with that corporation, have some responsibility for the finances. I can address more than Mr. Roper on the contact with the Performing Arts Center Foundation Board. I started working on this almost a year ago and contacted the former chairman. That chairman resigned in January when he became basically the owner of the tenant who is in the Performing Arts Center now. And so there was a new chairman appointed at that point who stayed as chairman until she resigned. And when she resigned, she evidently removed the financial records from the accountant.
Oh my God.
I tried to contact the accountant. The accountant said, "Oh, we won't talk to an attorney because you don't represent this corporation." At that point, the records were returned to the accountant, and there was yet another chairman appointed to that board of that corporation. So I contacted her. She had the information with the accountant, and then at that point, the filings were done. I was told I've not seen those. I reached out to her again to get that information. I was told that it would be forthcoming. Evidently, she got sick, and then we reached out again. Mr. Greeno reached out, and I did, and we found out that she is no longer the chairman. We got another name of an additional person, Mr. Greeno did, who is supposedly the chairman now. So it's been a process that we've gone through, 1, 2, 3, now 4 people that are supposedly the chairman of that foundation that we're trying to get the information from.
Does the management company provide monthly P&L statements?
They have provided a yearly P&L.
Okay, because the contract they signed requires them to put a monthly P&L statement.
That's right, and an update. And the first update, there was also a requirement in September that they say what shows they had and sort of a synopsis of where they were. And so they started that in September, and they've been up to date. And now just recently they do have the year-end P&L and have gotten on track doing that. At the beginning, that was not being done, and I physically went there to get it done.
Yeah, my only concern, and I'll be short, is we gave them $70,000. The last time we had the statement, it was $30,000. And we don't know who has the checkbook. We don't know who's spending the money. We continue to give that foundation. I think we gave them $8,600 a few months ago. We're giving them money, and we provide utilities and a building insurance. So they're entwined with that management company, and they refuse to provide full disclosure and transparency. That's bothersome to me.
I would say, Mr. State, I'm not sure how intertwined they are with that management company at this point. I think they've disassociated themselves as of last January, about a year ago. And that may be part of the problem, because there wasn't any continuity with the board and the management company at that time.
Didn't we just give didn't the foundation apply for an $8,600 funding, and we gave it to them?
I don't recall if that was the foundation or
It was
if
the
it were
foundation.
tenant. I don't recall.
I was the foundation. It was signed by the chairman. So, okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I remember, I think it was 3,500.
No.
They had a 3,500 to match, or was it 8,600 for what?
The veteran show was $8,600,
Oh,
which was the
veteran show.
which was the foundation.
They returned that back. Did they return it back, or I don't know I knew that they they weren't able to have the veteran show because of COVID.
They were not able to have it. I remember that because of COVID. And I know there's some conversation about them returning, but I'll get a follow-up.
Last I heard was that they returned the money.
Did you say you know who the chairman is currently?
I don't think I don't.
Well, I thought, I was going to say, if you did, you might can help Mr.
Well,
Hendricks.
the one that signed the application was supposedly the chairman at the time. You can look at the application. Was it Andrew Mullinex, I think, signed it? That application for $8,600 for the foundation. But what kills me is there's no board meeting. So you have a board is supposed to authorize the spending from that account, and there's no board meeting. There's no minutes. So this is just happening. If anything's happening with the foundation, it's happening just verbally and unauthorized. I mean, that's what's going on.
And the real $1 million question to Mr. Setta's point is you don't have minutes, they're not meeting, we don't have financial statements, we don't know if they're doing anything, we don't know if they're not, and that's what we need to know.
But I think we have to be careful, don't we? Because it's a 501c3.
Yeah, but it's part of the
But if it was me personally,
Not with the management.
we're paying the utilities on the building, the property insurance. We gave them $8,600. I would not give them anything else and let them use the facility unless there was full disclosure by the foundation as well,
May I say something?
in my opinion.
We do appoint the members to this board, correct?
They became self-perpetuating after they were created.
But we still,
Have the ability to.
We do have the ability to.
Can I get a confirmation on that?
We had an
appoint
application a
people
few weeks ago.
to this board, correct?
We do not appoint the board.
Why not? We do the other ones.
No, we don't. We have certain.
When did we stop doing that?
I don't think we ever did. I think
Yeah.
We did initially.
When it was, at the inception, when it was made, Councilman Whitehurst, when it was created, there had to be a board created, but after that, board members are not appointed by county council. There are certain members of council who are appointed to that board, but the individuals are not.
See, I was under the impression when we made this that we wanted to have us appoint so we could keep control of these boards. Is that not what y'all had thought? Did they come in and make bylaws that changed that?
I think their bylaws were changed earlier.
So we set up a set of rules and they went and changed it.
That would be true for all three.
Well,
Yes.
if the board voted on bylaws, and they were changed, then yes, they changed those.
So we basically set these guys up to have a free checkbook from the county, do what they want to, and we have no accountability to it.
No, that's where we have the ability to say, no, we're not going to fund, or yes, we are going to fund, once they got off the ground. That was the idea behind it.
But yeah.
That is the
But
accountability.
we don't even have a statement from them. We can't even get a financial
Do
statement.
we do that from Hagen Mill on a monthly, quarterly
We do
basis?
annual basis.
Annual basis?
They have been providing it quarterly,
Quarterly?
but on an annual basis as well.
And Hagen Mill's been filing a tax return and variety.
Can I ask you?
It has a state incorporation papers, everything.
Can we
Believe me,
re-
if they didn't, I'd be
Can
saying
we
it.
request an
No.
audit by SLED or some government entity to come in there? If you have a company set up like this corporation, can we not request that SLED come in and do an audit? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking because it seems to be that we've lost all
I would refer to the
influence.
county attorney on this, but I'll tell you, it'd probably be the Secretary of State that would do that, because that's who has jurisdiction.
Then would we contact
like
them and
that.
explain our problem?
But keep in mind, the point of creating a 501c3, the only reason to do it is to make an independent body that can do things that the county government can't do.
We have
They can get out and fundraise and those sorts of things. So that the whole idea from the beginning, you don't create them unless you're trying to create something independent.
understand, but we have a 501c3 with our Pickens Alliance, and we appoint those board members.
We appoint our side of it. I think they
Right.
agree to keep.
But
using
we
the same
appoint
one.
those board members to that 501c3, do we not?
Actually, there's not to their 501c3.
Right.
There's two separate boards at
There's a
Alliance.
county board and then there's a 501.
I understand there's two boards there.
Right.
Okay,
So we appoint the county board, and they typically agree to keep the 501c3 members the same as the county board.
is that in your structure?
We've always done that as a matter of practice. Same folks on 501c3 are the folks that we all appoint to the advisory.
But that's not, but you didn't put that in writing? Like that's not part of their structure? I just feel like we got no control here.
You have no oversight.
Your control is, and this is, Councilman Slater brings a great point, your control is whether or not you give them money. And they did apply for funds, or we did give money for specific things, and the way that we checks and balance it is they provide their financials to prove that if they want to continue getting money from us, that's what you have to do. So I guess the $1 million question, more than what you're saying before the Secretary of State step, is what are our options to claw back if they refuse? And if not, what are our options going forward to bring? I don't personally believe there's fraud there, but you do have to have that level of accountability that we don't have.
What I would say to that, Mr. Chairman, I think you're exactly right, that's the remedy is to not give them more money, which I think I've heard several of you say that. In terms of additional remedies, what I would ask that we do is we have the county attorney come back and give us some advice on that issue separate from tonight's meeting, so that we can make sure that we're being reasonable and in compliance with the law. These are separate legal entities. We have to tread with a certain degree of caution.
Can I ask you this? I keep bringing this up. They're in a county building, right?
The foundation doesn't live
Right,
anywhere.
but they're using the county facilities.
The foundation does not use the county facilities unless that's where they decide to meet.
Okay, so they're just supposed to raise, now, the management company that runs this thing separately for us, we got any problems with them?
No, as far as I know, we have no problems with it.
We just have a missing $30,000 or $35,000.
See, and again, things like that I'm not comfortable saying. The 501c3's books are not the county's books,
Nor are they the management company's
nor are
books.
they the management. Thank you, yes.
Well, the thing is, the foundation works under the name of Pickens County Performing Arts Center Foundation. They're entwined with us. We let them use the facility, which they applied for the veterans' money to put on a performance. So they intended to use it, clearly. We paid the expenses on the facility. So we have oversight responsibility. Whenever we give somebody money, we have oversight responsibility. The Hagen Mill, we give them money, and every quarter they give us financial statements. Every year they're supposed to come back to us with a report. I question the board member issue because there was a person who applied for a board member position on the Pickens County Performing Arts Foundation board that we were going to approve when we discussed it. So I disagree that, it's unclear whether or not we appoint that board or not, because we had an application last week. So we don't know anything. And I can just tell you just from experiences, the PTAs with schools, they're nonprofits, 501c3s, they're arm blanks. But at a middle school years ago, there was somebody stealing from there. And immediately came back on the school board. Why aren't you overseeing this? You're letting them use your facilities. You're paying expenses that yada, yada, yada. Why aren't you just doing due diligence and just asking for basic financial statements? And I could call the IRS tomorrow and say they're not filing their tax return. I could call the Secretary of State tomorrow and say they haven't filled out their incorporation papers. You know, we have a lot of choices, but they should provide the basic financial statements. We don't know what that. We don't even know who. Do you know who has a checkbook?
I don't have a clue. I don't know who has a checkbook for the United Way. I don't know who has a checkbook.
Well, but that's
for
different,
PTA.
though. I mean,
What I would say is that we
did we create? No. Did we create the United Way? No. I mean, we created this organization. We're involved with them.
It has that legal distinction.
It does, but we're still intertwined. That's my argument.
All that I can say for purposes of tonight's meeting is that we have requested, and we have requested repeatedly, which is what I see us as being limited in being able to do.
So if you don't mind, Mr. Roper, do exactly what we said, as we discussed. Have our attorney look into what we can do. Also, let's look at the bylaws and find out exactly who appoints and who don't appoint. And I want specific line cited, the whole 9 yards, so we can settle that once and for all.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I actually was looking for the bylaws as we spoke. Ms. Fowler sent them to me in March of last year. I read them then and said, okay, here's who's on. I just don't recall who they were. I would get a copy of the bylaws for you. But it specifically says who's appointed. I know that we have some seats on there, but there are other independent seats. But I agree with you wholeheartedly that we need to get those financial records of the foundation, and hopefully they will voluntarily give us those. Where my trail ran cold was with a person who is now an elected official in Liberty. That was the chairman. So I have not been able to get the information, but I will promise you I will continue to get it.
Thanks, sir.
No, I almost forgot. Can you get a copy of the original bylaws that when we created all three of them? And if we can look at what our intent was, and then what happened, how did it change? Who changed it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions for Mr. Roper? All right, hearing none. There was no committee report. This committee, we did not meet as committee. Council correspondence, item number 6 on tonight's agenda. I have to get there, I apologize. Non-essential county offices will be closed on Monday, January 17th, 2022, in observation of Martin Luther King holiday. The committee of the whole meeting will be on Tuesday, January 18th at 6 o'clock in the main conference room of the admin building. The next council meeting will be held on Monday, February 7th at 6:30 here in council chambers. Is there any other correspondence that need to be announced tonight? Hearing none. Next on our agenda is motion period new business. I'd like to make a motion that we add personnel matter to executive session related to COVID-19.
Second.
Motion by myself, second by the vice chairman. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That's unanimous. Any other new business or motions tonight?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Salas.
I'd like to add to the agenda tonight a discussion on a 120-day moratorium on development on Highway 11.
So I have a motion that we add to the agenda tonight a discussion on a 120-day moratorium on development on Highway 11. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Whitehurst. Discussion?
Do I get to discuss some of this now?
Any
Okay.
discussion?
The administration recommended this a few months ago. What do you think of the idea?
Mr. Said, I'm sorry, I was standing up and I didn't hear the answer to your question.
You recommended this a few months ago. What do you think is a good idea? You recommended this idea.
So actually, We'll discuss whether or not we add it on tonight's agenda.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll throw it on tonight's agenda.
Okay,
As
well,
long as it passes
do I need to
unanimously.
explain, this is the first time I've done this, do I need to explain why I want to do this, or do I just need to explain why it should be on the agenda?
That's,
The-
if you would like
the
to
why.
explain why you can, absolutely.
Well, I just think in March of last year, the council voted to have ACOG do a study on Highway 11. That report's not due till June of 2022, 16 months. I just think it's too long. I think we should put a moratorium of 120 days on manufacturing, commercial development, and subdivision development. This will give ACOG time to finish up the report. It will encourage those who are for and against development up there to come forward, and we can use the time to collect additional data and feedback from people.
Does anyone have a problem with adding this to the agenda?
That was
for
my next
discussion?
question. All right.
I think we're good then. Let's vote.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And that's unanimous. We'll add it just before consent agenda tonight. It'll be item 14. Any other motion, period, no business? Hearing none. Item 8 on tonight's agenda is consideration of a resolution 2022-01 recognizing January of 2022 as National Blood Donor Month within Pickens County. Ask for a motion and a second. Consider resolution.
Motion?
Councilman Feimster, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Seda. Any discussion?
I gave blood back in November.
Absolutely awesome. Mr. Roper, do we have plans to have a blood drive during the month of January somewhere in Pickens County?
We do, actually, there was a blood drive, I think it was today at a library, at one of the library branches, but we're also planning one for later in the month. We're going to continue planning them throughout the year. This resolution actually directs us. I have listened to you all tell me this, that you don't want these feel-good resolutions without actions being required. This resolution actually requires us as a county staff to set up further events.
Thank you, Mr. Roper. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hands. Thank you, gentlemen. Item number 9 on tonight's agenda, consideration of resolution 2022-02 approving fiscal year 2023 budget calendar. Do I have a motion and a second that we consider this resolution? Motion by Councilman Wilson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Feimster. Discussion.
I'd like to, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So last year, we took the opportunity to make, we have what we call a workout and discuss the strategic initiatives, the goals basically associated with those for the county. So we came up with 6 categories. Les, can you hear me now? Yes. All right. So we came up with 6 areas of focus from a strategic perspective for the county. From a leadership perspective, the only reason to tell folks that work and report to you that these are the strategy areas you're going to focus on is so that goals are set and money is allocated associated with impacting those strategies. So for me, we did that event sort of a little weird, timing with regards to the employees of the county, because the employees of the county put forward their budgets and you guys had discussions. And then the very first time that we had an opportunity to kind of tell you guys what our priorities were from a strategic perspective, based on input from our customers in the community, was well after you guys had momentum. That's a timing and a cycle that's unfamiliar to me, having worked in large-scale organizations where it's the strategy and the focus that sort of defines where you allocate your resources. So for me, having this whole process start well ahead of any kind of discussion about those seems a little arbitrary with regards to giving some rails to kind of guide you guys. For me, the piece of it though is, I think this is the structural piece. So we elect our chairman ostensibly for 2 years, right? I'm sure we could all raise cane and appeal or whatever, repeal it. But we set our leadership team on a 2-year basis. We had that opportunity to sit down after the elections and make that strategy. To me, doing that first time and then just kind of checking it again the next year and kind of basing it on what's going on in the economy, et cetera. 1 year at a time is not exactly very strategic. But over a 2-year cycle with a chairman for 2 years and a leadership team for 2 years, that direction gives you the opportunity to to give a real sort of guideline for the folks in the county government to sort of put forward their best foot over a larger period of time. So to me, I'd like to see that piece of it earlier on. And for this cycle, since no one's up for election, it could be truncated because we went through a very in-depth process. So we have a meeting, we have a public discussion about it, whatever. And if we want to allocate or change or move or reprioritize something, we could. But it seems to me that leaving that piece of it out puts us back in a position for two things. Lack of input for you guys where you really don't want to, you're not focusing the way we want. And what I would like to avoid is the complexity of explaining to the library folks that not giving them as much money as they asked for isn't a cut. It's just you're not getting as much money as you asked for. And that turned into a political debate that emboldened a lot of folks that have attacked the library over the years. It undermined some folks that would like to support and work with the library. The candidates that we were able to get to be on the library board, wanted to step back in some ways, folks that I talked to, because they didn't want to be part of a situation that was already militarized with respect to relationships and support and governance. So to me, if it's a cut because you asked for it and you didn't get it, let's avoid that. Let's put these guys in a position so that by the time it comes to us, we've had dialogue on the front end that should guide the discussion. And then when we have the discussion, we can score it, weigh it whatever way we want to with respect to how it impacts the strategic initiatives. That's how you should spend your money anyway. So for me, the big discussion here is timing. There's no place in here for us to say we'd like to do X, Y, and Z. And let's fix that. And let's fix it for the practical reason why it was, I don't think there's been someone that would support the library more. I spent most of my childhood at the library, and all of a sudden I was the anti-library guy because I didn't want to give them quite as much money as they'd asked for. And they didn't want to come back to the table with an argument that grounded that request and extra funding in a way that wasn't political. And no offense to you guys, but they went to y'all individually. They didn't come to us with a documentation. They didn't come with us with an argument. They didn't come with us return on investment. They didn't come with us and say, we want to do X, Y, and Z, and we need this money, and here's the impact to us. They just basically stirred the mud as much as they could, which is great, right? We have some folks out here that really love to do that, but we don't need to be doing that within the government. So let's fix that. Let's get a little bit more strategic, and let's do it in a more directed way.
Councilman Waters.
Many budgets ago, we did more of that initial meeting, and we got a little off track to that. And the idea was that council could then direct to staff, because I think last year we had a little conflict between what staff thought we had recommended and what we actually had thought we recommended. That's just a communication thing. I submit that, I don't know what you have planned on the COW this month, but is it possible to change that to more of a budget initial workshop so that we can kind of amongst ourselves have a public meeting and talk about where we see, because I totally see what he's saying, and I totally 100% agree. That way we go forward and the budget comes in, it's more to what we had originally had anticipated and what we had thought. And I don't know what we have coming up on that COW if it's not something we couldn't say. Because I think we need to do it early on, because then the administrator can say, hey, departments, this is what they're talking about. And that way he doesn't have to deal with it later when they come back with this stuff and he's like, we can't do that.
I agree with you 100%. I don't know that I've ever quite understood why we do such a bottom-up approach. And by the time we get the information that we need, it's kind of like you do wind up to your point. You wind up being, well, we're going to cut this here or cut this here. Or what are we going to cut to get to where we need to be? And I really like the strategic part of having a top-down first. But on the flip side of that, I mean, I've heard before where we have people that have submitted, we really believe that our department needs X, Y, and Z, and it doesn't ever get to us. We don't hear what the true needs are versus the wants. So, I mean, in my corporate world, we do a bottom-up approach, and the funny thing is, as soon as we do the bottom-up approach, the guys at the top go, nope, this is what it's going to be. So we do it every year, and it's always the same. And I get exactly what you're saying. So I would love to be able to do that strategic component at the beginning.
So now you said something, a year-to-year strategic. is difficult when you look at the role of council as a whole. You said something many months back, and I know you think I don't listen, but I really do. But if you're not thinking 10 years down the road, nobody else is, right? If you're continually thinking about this week, next week, what's happening today, we're not doing the role of council as a whole. That's the board's role is to direct, and you got to be looking beyond this year and next year. And I know that you have done that somewhat differently in the past. I think we've all gone through some pains and learning curves with administrators and councils changing over and this, that, and the other. But I think we do have a process more so than we did originally when we came on. Saying that, I think November is the sweet spot, but November brings a lot of question because if I'm going out in January, what am I going to do in November, right? But if you think about it, looking at the calendar, November is the time to have the conversation so that in December your administrator can come back with, this is what I think I understand, so that in January his team has an idea. But there really shouldn't be anything new or unique as long as you are truly every year revisiting it, kind of like you said, revisiting. And I agree with you 100% that the cow is a great place for us to go ahead in January and try to get that on and get that conversation occurring. But I don't disagree. I think waiting till this late in the game to have the conversation when the team is supposed to be submitting back by January, they probably need to hear what the vision and goals are, or the strategy of the county is. I don't disagree with that either. I just don't know the actual sweet spot.
It's in January. You do that in January after everybody's here. If there's a re-election and there's new people here, they should contribute to it. If you do that, then you can trim up a little bit of the debate that we had last time and the revisiting that we did. So you'll gain on the back end. The whole goal being, if you can't beat a plan with no plan.
So you say move the departments submit individual budget requests from January to February?
They can start working on whatever they want to at this point, right? Because they're the ground floor guys. But if we're going to have to focus this year on, making sure the peanut farmers are, have got enough water, whatever the goal is this year, and it's super critical to the economy. Discussion when the board is full of all the people that are going to be there for 2 years, and it doesn't have to. If the structure is already there, and there's other than significant changes in the economy, we go to war, everybody starts dying from COVID, cows are loose on the streets. That kind of thing can be taken care of relatively quickly, in a month's discussion to steer us, because it's strategy. It's not, I don't want to run these guys, business. They're going to run their own business. But the way that we're going to make that decision when it comes time to approve it is based on how your proposal makes an impact on the strategy. That's straightforward. It's a fair way to make a budget too, because like you said, now they're basically making a budget. What the hell can we get passed? Right? So it cuts out good ideas, it cuts out initiative, it cuts out, inventiveness, because it's, well, what do we think we can get these 6 guys to vote for? So if you're doing, what can I get these guys to vote for? It's, well, my buddy knows that guy, and he says he really loves when, chickens fly. So, that we're going to give some chicken stuff this year. Just tell them what the strategy is, and then we're all held to the accountability associated with telling all these people what we think is important in the community. That's a fairly straightforward. That's, by the way, if you do a 5-year, a 4-year, we could do a 4-year. If you do a long-term sort of, like, this is what our strategies are, they're a tactical annual basis. We're biannual, that's, we're voting you guys in, right? Give it the time to be able to be mature, but give these folks the ability to know what we're looking for and how we're going to make the decision. Instead of what happened this year, I gave, once the 2 of us lost the vote on the library board, gave up, came back around, and made sure that we got some new people on the library board. They didn't get what they wanted. They had the opportunity to really hook 4 votes, but they didn't take it. So instead of it being, they'd had 7 months. Remember how they complained that they got waylaid, that they got hijacked, they thought that it was going to be an open shut case. Well, they'd had 7 months to know that we are not going to vote for some of the craziness they put forward. So why would they put it forward?
So I guess it really needs to follow more like what we do with the Capitol, which I think we've come a long way with, but there is no surprise unless something breaks, or like the grinder, the new shredder that we did purchase. We all have a good idea what's on the capital plan for the next 4 years. It's kind of laid out there. So I think that is more the way, and that's the direction we're trying to take it, and I see it going. But you're right, making it more formalized, I think is
Here's my question to you. Every year we know we're going to arrest people, and we're probably going to have to feed them if we house them. Every year we're going to be cutting some grass. Every year we're going to pave some roads over here. We're going to fix a bridge over here. Every year we know trees are going to get knocked down. We're going to fix them. We're going to scrape some snow. Pretty much 80% of the budget is kind of, most likely this year we're going to do some of this, right? The places where we really change the budget are on the periphery. As times change, as needs change, as technology changes. So being strategic about it, this is where the priorities are. Like we said, I told everybody when I got elected, I'm going to do whatever it takes to fix roads. We came in here, and then the first year we took a huge action on roads. But now we're going to keep following that action. How are you guys going to spend the money? It's right here. If we tell everybody it's going to be roads, they shouldn't be surprised that it's going to be roads.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add something.
Mr. Sater.
I would change the calendar in two ways, which is in agreement with most of what I heard. First, I think the council has to have specific input at the start, very early on. Second thing is, I wouldn't have broad goals like tourism or public safety. They need to be more specific. And I would always start with an estimate of revenue. So let's say if Ralph comes in the first meeting and says revenue is going to be up 5%, we have a decision to make. Do we spend every dime of that or not? Given we have a high number of savings, we may agree to spend all that. And then the council would identify 5 priorities, and they would be specific, like we want to build an EMS station and we want to staff it. Or, we have to accept that we lost prison labor and we're going to have to replace that labor in the budget. Where are we going to do it and how much is it going to cost? The administration then comes in with its specific and independent priorities. They need to be independent. And what happens is the top-down priorities meet the bottom-up priorities. And what you do is you try to mesh them together within that 5% growth budget. We also want to talk about pay raises early on. We don't want any surprises there. We got a surprise last year. We have to agree as a council how much we want to pay people's raises. The first budget meeting, or the first presentation of the budget should just be a summary of those things. These are priorities for the administration. These are priorities for the council. This is how much money is coming in. This is what we're going to spend. Then we have 1 or 2 work sessions, and we narrow those top-down, bottom-up priorities. And then you have a direction to create a detailed budget, like your first reading, but that would be your second reading. And it would have those priorities that we agree on. And then you kind of work from there to your third reading. So the second reading really should be almost the final budget. There shouldn't be a lot of changing in the third reading. It should be that second reading. And that's when the top-down priorities meet the bottom-up priorities. But you should be independent of what you think, because you're going to see a lot of things that we don't see. In the community, I see things that I can tell you that are important that you may not see, and there's things that you see on the line that we don't see. And when we sit down, we'll have to mesh them within a 5% growth budget. That's my thoughts.
My question is, can we do it on the 18th or 12th or whatever we're?
I would have a separate budget meeting.
Well, I was going to make the
February.
COW the budget meeting.
Well, I would have an extra one. We got so many cow things on the budget.
I don't know. I don't know what
I would have
what
an
looks
extra
like on
budget
the cow right now.
Yeah, and I think we meet tomorrow to discuss the cow log and an agenda, so we can look at that and see if we need to call a special meeting just for the budget.
So from what I heard from Mr. Sater there, that's a finance guy's approach. Mine's an operations guy approach. There's always a mix between the two, right? The operations guy's got to deliver, and there's always a human element to that. The finance guy's got to stay within the budget, right? So there's always going to be tension between those two. But what he's talking about is pretty much standard. And it keeps you from getting to a point where anybody is hijacked or waylaid, and where anybody has expectations that aren't going to materialize like we saw last year with the library folks. So there's a mix in there, but the timing that he's talking about is perfect.
So specific changes to this document that you have in front of you for.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we had a priorities meeting in January. To what Councilman Sater was saying.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Right. Any discussion on that motion in second? In favor of that amendment, signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Anything else that needs to be amended? Hearing no more conversation, all those in favor as amended, adopting as amended, please signify by raising your hand. And that motion carries. Item number 10 on tonight's agenda. Staff update on planning for upcoming county road maintenance and reserve fund allocations. Mr. Roper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity. I wanted to do this as a standalone, and I appreciate y'all giving me a few minutes to do it because I think it's of utmost importance that you understand as a council, after the vote you took to give my staff the proper funding, I think it's important that we give you some clarity on how we intend to implement that. I'm thinking specifically of questions that Mr. Whitehurst asked last month, Mr. Seda asked last month, about how we intended to spend the money. And if you'll recall, to orient, and not to take up too much of your time, because I know you have a lot to do, but there are two funds that were created by the ordinance, the budget amendment ordinance. One was a regular road maintenance revenue fund, and the other one was a road reserve fund. That's in the ordinance. That was from the initial plan. That's the way it was set out. And then at some point we had our state senator sought an opinion from the Attorney General, and the Attorney General provided us further clarity on what his view of the law was on how we can spend the road maintenance versus the road reserve. So I'll tell you that since we've got that opinion, we've used it as good news. We've gone back and looked at our plans. We've adapted our plans to fit what it appears to be the state of the law is, and also the intention of the ordinance. And I just want to show you kind of a grand overview of how we intend to do this, but I want to tell you the end of the story before I get into the details. The end of the story is you gentlemen provided us the revenue stream for a sustainable road program just as you intended. The devil, so to speak, is in the details of how we divide between those two accounts. And staff, as of right now, has spent a great deal of time working on that. Regular road maintenance, think about this as regular house maintenance. Cutting your grass, fixing the bump in the sidewalk, replacing a window pane. You're gonna pay for that out of your checkbook. You're gonna look how much you got in your checking account, and you're gonna do that regular maintenance. That's the way we're gonna approach our road maintenance fund. So crack sealing and surface treatment, this would be routine maintenance to extend the life of a road. That's coming out of the road maintenance fund, as it should, because it's the sort of thing you'd write a checkbook from your checkbook at home if you had to. You wouldn't get your savings account for that. Patching and paving roads with 25% less patching. And I want to point this out to you too, because this is a complaint we get a lot. The contractor will come through and patch the road like that and leave, and they're going to patch in a lot of places on that road like that. And people will say, wait, is that all that's happening? No, they're patching those parts that have failed, and then they come back and they lay fresh asphalt over the whole road. So that's a patch and pave approach. In those circumstances where patching is less than 25% of the whole road, my staff believes that's routine maintenance. That's regular maintenance and is paid for out of the, lack of a better way of putting it, the checking account. You're going to do that year over year over year. You're going to look at the pavement condition index, you're going to patch where you can, and you're going to put a fresh coat of asphalt down. I'm going to come back to that in a moment and show you the contrary example. But where you have to replace culverts, when you have to do those are regular maintenance things when they need to be done. When a culvert you know is failing. This doesn't include circumstances where there's an emergency failure of a culvert that was unanticipated. But when you're planning to replace a culvert, that's regular road maintenance. When you're replacing a pipe larger than 60 inches in diameter, and it's part of your regular plan, that's coming out of road maintenance. Now, I'll tell you that smaller pipes, cross-line pipes, smaller things like that, those are provided for already in the maintenance budget. So we'll continue to provide for those with maintenance. But the larger culvert pipes, we believe those should be paid from regular maintenance funds. Now, if you look at a road like this road, this is when you come home at the end of the day and you realize that, wait, my house is falling in. This is not a checkbook issue. This is, you hit your savings and you fix it. Or in our case, this is years of insufficient funding for our road system. A situation you all fixed, but we need to hit that reserve account for it. So we're going to look at it when the patching on a road exceeds 25%. We're going to do core samples and we're going to see is the subgrade of that road sufficient. If it isn't, and it's a full reclamation, that's coming out of the road reserve fund. That's coming out of the savings account. We have roads like that. It's not an accident that council after council for time immemorial has struggled with the fact that our road system is unsustainable. There are going to have to be some circumstances where year over year, we're going to have to hit the savings account, the reserve fund, to fix those circumstances. We also know from the Attorney General's opinion that we need to look at multi-year projects, things that could not be paid for in 1 year. Now, we could restripe every road in the county in 1 year, but we wouldn't have any money for paving. So we're looking at, what about those roads that are in good enough condition that they're not going to be addressed through the patch and pave or the total reclamation? They've got a few years on them before they have to come back around and be maintained. Could we not make them safer? Could we not make them better for the public if we went into a multi-year striping project where we looked at roads that are not going to be repaved in the short term, but over the course of years we set up a multi-year program where we're restriping the roads? That's going to come from the savings account, because it's a multi-year project. Similarly, do we have guardrails in the county that are not up to DOT standards? We could replace them all, but I'll tell you, it would blow our budget. It might surprise you to know that year after year, up to now, when we had to replace guardrails, there was no real budget for that. It ate into our paving budget. So we look at this as a multi-year project where we're going to address guardrails over time and tap the road reserve fund to do it. Multi-year culvert project. As we look in future years, if we know in year 3, in year 4, that we're going to be repaving a road, we're going to take a look at the culverts in advance so that we'll know, okay, do we need to replace that culvert? And if we do, we're going to do it in a year or 2 in advance of fixing the road so that we don't end up in the terrible circumstance that the public would hate to see, which is we spend money on asphalt, we pave a road, a year later we replace the culvert and dig up the asphalt. They don't want to see that. So this is a multi-year program that we're going to establish. It's going to stay ahead of our maintenance program. And that's also going to come from the reserve fund. There are other examples of this, but I wanted you all to know that we're going to approach this in the way the Attorney General described, the way our attorney has described for us, in keeping with the intention of council in passing the ordinance to begin with, and in another way that can best be described as we're going to use our common sense as we approach the spending of this money. But in terms of the public keeping us accountable, I would ask you to go to fixingcountyroads.com, not only to report road problems that you see, but also to keep a tab on the 2 funds themselves, the road maintenance fund and the road reserve fund, and see the collections and the expenditures. These will be within a month of when they happen. So this is November. You'll see there's not a lot of collections because the bills have just came out. But you can follow it month to month. You can also look forward and see what our plans are for these multi-year projects on fixingcountyroads.com. We invite the public, we invite you as council to look at that resource, to hold us accountable as we work, as we say here informally, kicking asphalt, fixing county roads. Thank you for what you did to give us the funding source to be able to approach this in a systematic way, in a sustainable way, and we look forward to the public seeing real benefits. As early as this spring, they will see paving projects underway. We're in the process of bidding those as we speak. Be glad to answer any questions, but that's just a kind of a general overview of how we're thinking to approach this to try to meet council's intention.
Questions for Mr. Roper? Hearing none, we'll move to item number 11 on tonight's agenda. That's first reading, the title only of an ordinance to combine Construction Board of Appeals and Zoning Board of Appeals. I'll ask for a motion and a second to constitute first reading and title only of this ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Seda and a second by Councilman Feimster. Any discussion? Councilman Whitehurst.
Have we got attorney, Mr. Attorney?
We are checking on that, Mr. Whitehurst. I have, our staff reached out to LLR and got some negative feedback. I'm still hopeful that we can combine these 2 boards. One is more specific than the other, so I'm trying to find a way to do that. I'll have a better report for you at second reading.
So we're not even sure we can do it yet, but we can start the process easy.
That's right. So I would ask the council to pass it for tonight in title only.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 12 on tonight's agenda, second reading of an ordinance to the Code of the County of Pickens to certify the vacant textile building located at 225 Ruhamer Road, Liberty, South Carolina, as a textile mill site under the South Carolina Textiles Communities Revitalization Act. Ask for a motion and a second to constitute this second reading.
Motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Costner. Do I have a
Second.
Second by Councilman Finster. Discussion.
Is this when we have that piece of property that's nothing on it? Or is that the one in Easley?
No, this is the one in Liberty that used to be.
Orion Rugs.
This is the rug mill. This is an
Okay.
actual band.
It's actual,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Statham.
what are their plans to build residential, commercial on that property?
This one, and I know these two were kind of heading down the path together. This one is a textile mill, the abandoned Mohawk rug mill below Liberty, near Liberty High School, that is going to be repurposed into a actual commercial enterprise. It's going to be an industrial plastics recycling facility.
Will they be asking the county for a property tax cut, or will they be going for the state income tax cut?
State income tax.
Okay, because it says neither of those things in our ordinance, which is probably not required. Is there a way we can hold them to those two things, or could they change their mind? I mean, once they get the certification from us, could they just decide, oh, we're going to make it residential, and we're going to ask you for a property tax cut? Could they do that?
Remember, we got some advice from your Economic Development Council on that last month in December, and I don't want to mischaracterize the advice, but basically this goes hand in glove with a filing they have to do at Department of Revenue. So I don't believe they have the ability to change horses in midstream like you're describing.
Yeah, because my concern is you have two choices. They can put commercial or residential there. They can ask for a state income tax cut or a property tax cut. So if they wanted to put residential there and bring all these new people into the county, and then wanted a property tax cut, we wouldn't have the money to pay for the services that all these people are going to provide. So I don't want to get in a situation where we're approving residential development and then giving property tax cuts to do it.
Mr. Chairman.
So I want to make sure that doesn't happen. He's telling me it won't in this case because it's a commercial property, and they've already agreed to go for the state income tax cut.
Vice Chairman.
Mr. Roper, or Mr. Hendricks, so the vote on this ordinance is just to say that it's a textile mill. They would then have to come back. Let's say they decided to do that. Let's say they decided to do what Councilman Sada said. They said, you know what, we're going to go for the property thing. We would still have to vote on that, right?
That's correct. On
So,
the property tax.
right, we could still deny that. All we're saying in this ordinance is, yep, it's a textile mill site. Yes, it qualifies for those things, and that's all we're doing.
That's correct. I have not reviewed this specific piece of property. It has not gone through the planning commission that I'm aware of. This came directly to council. However, what you're saying is exactly right. Is if they wanted to get the property tax reduction, they'd have to come back with that.
Okay.
This is for the income tax credit that they get is 25% of the construction cost on what they're doing at the location.
From the state.
That's right. But this does not say whether it's commercial or residential. This ordinance does not.
They didn't say either of those things. I just wanted them to be upfront, which it sounds like they were. So that's good enough for me.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 13 on tonight's agenda is second reading of an ordinance to develop a jointly owned and operated industrial business park in conjunction with Oconee County. Such industrial business park to be geographically located in the Oconee County and established pursuant to Section 4-1-17 of the Code of Laws of South Carolina, 1976 as amended, to provide for a written agreement with Oconee County to provide for the expenses of the park, the percentage of the revenue application, and the distribution of fees in lieu of ad valorem taxation and other matters related thereto. Do I have a motion and a second to constitute second reading of this ordinance?
Motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Finster. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chairman Costner. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That carries unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 14 was added to tonight's agenda. It's the 120-day moratorium on development along Highway 11. Councilman Seda. You wanted to add this for discussion? I'll let you lead on that.
First question I have is for the administration. You recommended this months ago. What did you have in mind, and what do you think of the idea?
So the idea in my recommendation, back when we talked about this, and thank you for recalling that, Mr. Seda, is that while the county is going through the process of looking for the first time for some type of development standards that are specific to our scenic highway, that we put a pause on any projects out there, both to protect the county and the public, but also to protect development, to put development on notice that, look, don't get way down the road on something when we're carefully studying changes to what's allowed or standards that are allowed. So we just think it's in terms of fairness to everyone to put that type of moratorium on while we do this. It's temporary. There'll be some specific ways we have to do that, which I believe Mr. Hendricks is prepared to discuss, but I do recommend it.
Councilman Whitehurst.
Mr. Roper, are there any projects going on there now?
There's nothing pending in front of the Planning Commission that I'm aware of right now. I know some of the I don't want to call them worst case scenarios because I don't want to put my thumb on the scale of how we end up in this circumstance. But let's imagine a small commercial box store right in front of Table Rock State, something like that.
Right.
Could someone start that project tomorrow? Yes. They could come in here and pull the permits for that. There'd be no way to really stop it. So that we don't have anything like that today.
So there's no permits right now
That's
that
right.
are already, so we're not stopping anyone that's already
That's
put
right.
money into something and started down a road.
And not only that, provide reassurance for that. My understanding of the state law, and I would let the county attorney opine on this separate from me, but my understanding would be that if someone had already started the process, this really wouldn't impact it.
Yeah, it's going forward.
That's right.
Is it legal? How many days can it be? What are the parameters that we could set it up?
Okay, there's three parts of this moratorium that you need to be aware of. First, the purpose of the moratorium must be stated and it's got to be passed by ordinance. Okay, and the purpose of you need to state what the purpose of the moratorium is, and what that is to research and implement whatever amendments you would make to the developmental standard ordinance to whatever it is that you decide to do. That's so you can state what the purpose is. That's number one. Number two, your moratorium has to be of limited duration. Now, Councilman Sada, you stated 120 days. I think you could go longer. You could go 6 months, which is 180 days. I think that's the presumptive limit.
Could you do 120 days and later extend it?
You got to know that there's not a specific case. However, 180 days with an additional extension, that would be 3 months passed by a resolution, not an ordinance, is presumed to be as long as you could go. So you could go 6 months, and then you can add another 3 months by resolution, you wouldn't have to actually have an ordinance. So I would suggest that what you might want to do, rather than 120 days, is 180 days, which would be the full 6 months. And if you put in your ordinance that you have the ability to extend it for another 3 months by resolution, that has been deemed to be appropriate. It's presumptive because there's no court case that says exactly what it is. And then the third thing that you must do is once you pass this moratorium, if you do, then you need to immediately begin to research, and I think we already have, what amendments that it is that you want to be placed into the DSO. So number one, say what the purpose is to research and implement changes to your DSO. Number two, it has to be of limited duration. It can be 6 months with a 3-month extension by resolution. It has to be passed by ordinance. The original moratorium does. And then number three, once it's passed, you need to promptly get on it, research it, and just don't let it hang out there indefinitely.
Could you be specific about the development that you put a moratorium on? For example, if somebody wanted to build an individual house, that would be fine, but I specified manufacturing, usage, commercial development, subdivisions, and signage.
I think what you specified is appropriate, and also, I think that is limited enough that it's clear what you're talking about, but yet allows most of the things that are already going on up there to continue to go on.
Okay, so it has to have 3 readings?
Yes.
Okay.
But tonight could be the first one.
And it really doesn't have to be more specific than just the title?
That's correct.
Okay.
But I would consider, and certainly this is in the purview of council, I would consider doing it for 180 days rather than.
The reason I'm opposed to that is this ACOG thing is just unbelievable. I mean, I went out and I knocked doors up there. I did 2 mailers. I solicited feedback through those mailers. I looked at every sales transaction in the last 4 years. I looked at every tax bill on Highway 11. I logged the number of properties that are for sale now. I looked at all the reviews of the 29 B and Bs up there just to see where the trends are. I did this in 2 months. These guys are on to 16 months is what's going to take them. So I think 120 days, if they can't get a report in our hands in 120 days, it's a joke. We need to push them along. Because honestly, I don't need them. I didn't vote for it. But if they want to be at the table, they need to get moving. Just my opinion. I'm sorry. Because we can't wait. Somebody could come in with a Dollar General tomorrow and file a permit, and it's done. We can't stop it.
Mr. Chairman, so I appreciate you turning me into this person because I'm going to go to the conspiracy theory. I'm just teasing you.
I know.
Once we start down this road and we vote on this, and it doesn't stop any, does that put every developer on notice to go, let's run up there and get a permit now? Is that going to, would that be a problem?
It does, but where's your beginning?
That's what I'm saying. Where does it begin?
Once the genie's out of the bottle, is it going to have people come and try and build something right away while they can do it? Is what you're asking.
Yeah.
That's the council's decision. But if you don't do it, I would assure you that it's going to happen.
Right. No, I agree. Okay, thank you.
That's a good question.
Oh,
But either way, you have to do 3 readings.
Right. That's what I'm worried about.
If we didn't have a
3 readings.
moratorium, we changed DSO.
We can't do it by resolution?
No, you cannot.
Okay.
For the two upcoming special meetings, can have a function for second and third?
Yeah, they had to be, what, how many days apart? 14 days apart?
A week.
Second?
I'll just be honest. I looked at the property owners and who owns what up there. I looked at what's for sale. It's unlikely somebody's going to do that, given the nature of who owns that property now. But what's happening when you look at these people visiting here, they love the area, they're coming, they're buying property. There's going to be development, and it's going to change in ways that the people who live up there don't want it. So I want to get ahead of that, and that's why I brought it up tonight. I'd be surprised if Dollar General filed a permit tomorrow. I don't even think they own property there, from what I can see. So, but it's we've been lucky up until this point. That's all I'm saying.
I think I agree with your 120 days because we need to put some pressure on these guys to do what we did. Give them money to do this, did we not?
7,500.
We did, it was a token amount, but we did.
But they've been piddling around with it long enough.
My opinion is that the place is a critical asset for the community, and nothing in government works quick. If we can do 180 days and it's faster, that's fine. I can't understand why the ACOG guys would, I can't think of any non-sailor term, would give a rat's ass about whether or not we do 120 days or not. So let's do 180 days because we can add some to it at the end. Government works slow. This has to be right. That place is important. If you're Route 11 all the way from 85 all the way up Spartanburg, we've got one last thing. Just had the opportunity to drive across the country. We have something that's competitive from a viewshed perspective and from a historical perspective with just about anything that's beautiful in the country. So, it doesn't hurt anything for 180 days. If you guys want to pressure the ACOG guys, find a different way to do it.
I mean, I'm fine making a motion for 180 days. That's fine. That's my motion. And then it's just in title only, and we'll work out the details. Second reading, I don't mind deferring to the administration on that. They roughly know what we're looking for. Manufacturing, commercial development, subdivision signage, and I wouldn't include individual lots as individual residents.
So let me make sure I got the motion clear. 180-day moratorium on commercial sign,
So it's manufacturing, commercial development, subdivisions, and signage.
along the Highway 11 corridor.
Yeah, you have to define what that corridor is. That's going to be part of it too, right?
Would you like to include retail in that?
Along the scenic highway, because that's a designation
You say commercial,
that
didn't you?
exists.
He did.
Okay, commercial, okay, I just heard manufacturing.
Along the scenic highway. In title only, I'm assuming.
Yep, that's fine.
So that is the motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by the Vice Chairman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Item 14 on tonight's agenda will be the consent agenda, provision of county employee health benefits for upcoming fiscal year, the 2030 comprehensive plan referral by council to the Pickens County Planning Commission for further public input and recommendations, consideration of funding requests from the Pickens Joint Regional Water System, and then council redistricting. Can I get a motion that we adopt the consent agenda?
Motion?
Motion by Councilman Feenstra. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Wilson. Discussion.
I have a question. Can you be a little more specific on the first one? A, what are we doing?
Yes, sir. What that's basically doing is we're putting it in the committee of the whole because we want to come back to y'all in the spring, March, late February, March, April, whenever council's pleasure is, to bring back a specific plan to you all of how we would propose to go forward, so you would know before it got encapsulated in a budget, and you could say, no, you're off track. So that's the idea.
Well, you and I have had this discussion, and I think the approach is not to solve the problem, but to bring somebody in who can solve the problem. And until they get in here, then they can present to us, and then if we don't like it, we can fire them like that. But I don't want to get down a road where we're giving somebody something without knowing what they're going to be doing. And I just have, I've been battling this for 6 years.
Yeah, as I've explained to you in our conversations, which I appreciate, you've made me a true believer in this. And so I just want to get the process started now. I want to get it started now. I want us to get where we as a staff know that we need to be bringing y'all a plan. I'm not going to design the plan, as you talked about. I'm not the quarterback or the offensive coordinator. I'm not even the manager of this type of thing. But we're going to take a good swing at it, Mr. Whitehurst, hopefully in time that if y'all don't like the plan, we can go back to the drawing board. Still have time.
We can discuss this in the committee of the whole.
That's what this does.
Yep.
All right. I have a motion second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 15 on tonight's agenda is executive session. I have legal, Pickens County versus South Carolina DHEC and MRR, Pickens LLC. I have contractual, Project Arnold. I have personnel, Public Works. I have board and commissions, applications. And then we added personnel matters related to COVID-19. Do I have a motion and a second that we go to executive session for these items?
I have a point of information for you, the chairman, right? I think that's how that goes. The last time that we had a executive session, there was a subject broached that was not in the list, and employees were all asked to leave. The legal counsel was asked to leave. I would like to know if that's standard practice and if we should anticipate things like that in the future. Because it didn't occur to me that there was standard practice, and I'd like to make sure that that's not something that we should expect. Because it caught me completely off guard.
Well, it is if we as a council vote unanimously to add something to executive session, we can do that
during the meeting.
During the meeting, and we've done it before.
While we're
we just did it tonight.
No, we did that. That was added.
No, we just added a personnel issue for COVID tonight in executive session.
Right here. But when we were in executive session, that got added. We
No,
didn't vote outside of that.
It was added prior to going to executive session. It was added. Now, we
the
asking,
format of it to ask the employees and the legal counsel to leave and all that stuff.
and in hindsight, that should have been a conversation amongst council who was going back prior to going into executive session.
Okay. Because my understanding is that if Ken's not there and he sends somebody in his stead, that asking them to leave is the same as asking the administrator to leave, and under our form of government, it's my understanding that that's not specious.
That is because if the conversation has to deal with that particular person, they shouldn't be in the room.
We do have the ability, and we have in the past, we decide who needs to be in the room to hear executive session. I'm not saying that it occurred the appropriate way last time, but that is a conversation that as a council, we can decide who needs to be present. But I will say that the way that it was handled last time was not the way it should have been handled.
Can I ask why?
Because one council member can't say, get out of the room.
That was a request. That was a request that we had to serve.
And I agreed with you on the request, but the way it went down was probably not the best.
It could have been embarrassing for that employee. And to create that situation, I don't want to do that.
And I
So
totally understand.
this is a point of, so I'm asking the chairman, so that flies, if it didn't seem to me that we'd voted for it prior to that. I'll go back and look, I could be.
It was.
But then asking the folks to leave, including Megan. I don't see how the discussion had anything to do with Megan. Megan was asked to leave, and she's the, the record keeper for our actions.
Understand?
So that's not, but not for you or for him. I'm asking the chairman. That's none of that, that's not, is that normal?
We
Yeah,
have
those
in the
folks to leave.
past asked for everyone to leave depending on the sensitivity of the matter. Absolutely.
Okay, because it's just not within my range of experience.
We have.
Okay.
Any other discussion over executive session tonight? I have a motion, I have a second. I have a motion and do I have a second? I need a motion and a second that we go into it. No, we do, because we just discussed.
Yes. You're good.
All those in favor, I think.
Who was my motion?
I stopped the vote for the point of
Yeah,
information.
so who was my motion? Can I get a motion? Then we go into executive session. Councilman Seta, can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Feenstra. Any other discussion? All those in favor of going into executive session for these items, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll return after executive session.